So 7,500 Swiss francs means it's about 8,200 US dollar. For some minor work, nothing catastrophical has failed on the car. Ciao, I'm Mario, the Swiss Car Guy on YouTube, at Swiss Car Guy Mario on Instagram if you want to follow. And today I am sitting in my 1964 Cadillac Coupe de Ville. Yes, a car you haven't seen on this channel for a while, but I still have it. I sometimes forgot myself that I still have it because the car has been in the workshop for quite a while. And I brought it to have some, let's say, minor work done. And then that kind of spiraled out of control into some still minor work, but at very high expense. And I have received the bill finally. I mean, I have the car back, obviously. The work started at the middle of August 2022. And I finally got the car back, finished in drivable condition. I think at the end of April 2023. In between, the car was brought back to my mom's place so that the garage could free up the space to do other work, because I told them, look, I don't need the car in winter, so you can work on it when you don't have anything else to do, so take your time. But they came to the point where, winter tire season came, and then they were super busy and they needed the space because this car is huge and it takes up, a lot of space in the workshop. So they brought it back and then they picked it back up and continued working on it. And now you might ask, Mario, what have you had done on this car since, it took so long? A full restoration, obviously? No. It's much, much less. In fact, I have sheets here and a spreadsheet, and basically I brought the car in to have minor things done. First, I wanted the car to have a service because I never serviced since I bought it. The previous owner, the seller, he said the car was serviced, but I mean, who knows? Do you really trust car salesmen? No. Then I wanted just to have a service, change all the liquids, like also differential liquids and that stuff. I wanted to have some oil leaks fixed because the car was obviously leaking oil. I mean, obviously, if you look the floor on the parking space, some of these oil leaks I had found myself. For example, I knew the valve cover gaskets were leaking, and also the crankshaft seal behind the harmonic balancer was also leaking. So those were two things I had already found, and I wanted the garage to, to take care of them. I mean, valve cover gaskets, yes, maybe that's something I could have done myself, but it's a bit of a messy job. I don't have a workshop, so I brought it to the garage to have them do it. I bought actually all the parts I thought I needed, but turned out I needed more parts. But anyway, and I supplied them all. And I also wanted to, and that's probably the most important thing of all, I wanted to have the coolant leak fixed. Because I had diagnosed myself that the water pump was leaking out of the water pump shaft. So I bought a new water pump and I wanted the garage to put it on. And also, since my coolant system, or the coolant system of the car, because my coolant system is great, the coolant system was full of gunk. It was terrible. And so I wanted them to also flush it while they're at it. And yeah, that turned out a bit more complicated than I thought. Also the brakes. On hard braking, the car would sometimes pull to the right. So I thought there was something not really right with the brakes, and I had them take a look at it. And also I told them just look over the car and, fix or show me whatever is broken on it. I think I also mentioned that the car squeaks sometimes when you steer after the car is warm, and I wanted them to address that, but to be honest, I am not sure whether they have. Because I received a very, very big bill, and I mean, I don't really have to tease it. The bill was for 7,537 francs. 1 Swiss franc is about €1, maybe slightly bit more, like 102 or something like that, and about $1.10. So 7,500 Swiss francs means it's about $8,200. For some minor work, nothing catastrophical has failed on the car. And now you might wonder, how is that even possible? Well, there are basically 2 reasons. The main reason is Switzerland. And in Switzerland, a garage charges you, I think, between maybe the cheapest ones around 90 francs an hour, and the most expensive ones like 200 francs an hour or something like that. My garage charged me 160 francs an hour, and they had some hours put in. If I check it, it was 42 hours of labor, so that alone was like 7,000 francs. And now you might also ask, how did it take them so long to change a water pump and, you know, a few gaskets? Did they do engine out or what? No. I think they started by removing the harmonic balancer, which had never been removed from the car. And this is a 64, so it's been in there for 59 years. And that was a bit of a hard task. I mean, I was communicating with them back and forth, and they were pulling their hairs out. In the end, they managed to get it out, but it took them about a day just to get the harmonic balancer out. Now you might say, well, they're an incompetent garage or so, but I think they are very competent. They're also very careful because they try not to break stuff. But I mean, old cars, and on old cars, I mean, they're easier to work on than new cars because they're more accessible. You usually have more space and less electronics. But if something has been in place for decades, it often doesn't want to come off anymore. So they got the harmonic balancer off, and then they installed a sleeve for the crankshaft thingy there that I supplied to stop oil leaks there. So that's good. And the water pump was a bit more of a difficult job. Not because it was difficult. They removed the water pump, but then they realized that the mating surface, the flange of the engine where the water pipe bolts to, it was very, very badly corroded. So they figured, well, if we put a new water pump on, it will never seal because it's so bad. So they first had to, you know, try to clean that up, work that to make it seal. Then they put the new water pump on, and it was leaking. So the water pump was leaking from the flange, of course. So they first, they thought they had cleaned the surface up enough to make it seal again, but it didn't. But they also realized that they had missed a stud. And why did they miss that stud to fix the water pump? Because it wasn't there. It had sheared off some time in the past, and the old water pump, it would still seal because it was so rusty. So the whole rust on the flange was acting as a sealant for the water pump, despite the water pump not being tightened down properly with all the studs. So they had to hire a machinist to drill that stud out, to retap the hole, and then to put a new stud into it so the water pump would hold. And when they did that, the water pump did actually hold on and it didn't leak. But that was not the entire story, because there's also a water crossover pipe that goes, I think, from one cylinder bank to the other, that also is connected to the water pump. And when they removed that, they found also that the flanges on that pipe were very corroded, so the surface wasn't plain anymore, and they doubted it would seal at all. And also there was a fitting for a hose that I have no idea where it goes, but that fitting was basically gone. It had turned into a rusty mess, and they said there was no way of putting a new fitting on it. They called me and asked whether I could procure a new crossover water pump, maybe express from America. And I had to tell them, well, first off, there is no new crossover water pipes for a 429 Cadillac from 1964. And also, if I find any of these, it's certainly not going to be express. It's going to take weeks for it to come. So I asked them, don't you just have a machinist just, plane the flanges and try to put a new fitting in it? So they actually did the very same day. So the very same day, the whole flanges were cleaned up enough to, to seal, and the old fitting was cut off and the new one was drilled in and tapped into, and now that crossover pipe is good and it seals and it's very good. And at that point, the coolant system basically was tight. It didn't leak anymore, so very good. But I insisted that they do a flush of the cooling system because it was full of gunk, and I wanted that, out, because how is gunk in the cooling system any good? They did that, and then the cooling system started leaking. So yay! And they just put some stop leak into it, hoping it would fix the leaks, and so far it has. But basically, I wanted to have the gunk out of the cooling system, and now I got most likely new gunk from whatever stop leak they used. So not great, and this is something I don't know how long that will work out. Right now I haven't driven the car that much. I've driven it back from Auburn, where my mom lives, where the car has been living for the past year, and it doesn't seem to have overheated, but I didn't really check the water level because also my temperature gauge has failed. I bought a new temperature sender to have it put in by them, because I said, when you're doing, put that in, and then they said, well, the gauge doesn't work because it doesn't do anything. And I think if I tap it, sometimes it starts working, but that temperature gauge has given me a bit of problems, and more on that later. But basically, the cooling system now works. It's tight. It's been flushed several times. They had to use stop leak. They had to redo flanges and everything. And a lot of labor is involved in this. And in Switzerland, labor is expensive. So at least now it shouldn't leak, because before I was driving around with jugs of water basically in my trunk, because it would leak so much and so badly. And I have a story about how I first discovered this later on. First, let's continue with the numbers. The oil leaks. The valve cover gaskets, the easy part, wasn't so easy. Because when they took the valve cover gaskets off, they realized that the valve cover gaskets were not plain anymore. They were all buckled and bent, because in the past the car must obviously have been leaking oil from the valve cover gaskets. And instead of replacing the valve cover gaskets, they just tightened the covers more. And by doing that, they bent them. So the garage first had to, knock them straight, and I don't know exactly what they did, but they straightened them up. They put in the Velcro gaskets that I supplied, and that's fine. They had also already done the seal around the crankshaft behind the harmonic balancer, so that was good as well. But when they looked at the car, they realized there was a major oil leak coming from the fuel pump. So for the fuel pump flange was leaking oil. So they recommended we get a new fuel pump, which of course, because I don't want to have oil leaks. So they ordered a new fuel pump, which took weeks to arrive. So yay. Then they put that on, and that now works. I think the car leaks very little oil right now, hoping, because it did leak quite a bit before, but I think most oil is just burned because piston rings and whatever. But that's one of the things that was done to the car. Yes, I wanted them to check the brakes, because on heavy braking the car would veer to the right, and they found that in the rear the pistons in the brake drums were leaking. So they replaced the two rear pistons in the brake drums, which were very expensive, because it was like $170 per piston. So I mean, I reckon if I knew that, I might have sourced the parts considerably cheaper. But it was 330 francs just for the pistons in the rear. Anyway, the car should now brake better. It still brakes, I feel, the same as before, but on hard braking it hasn't been veering off, which is good. So they did that. Apparently they also adjusted the steering, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was that was squealing when I was steering, because honestly I haven't heard that squealing anymore. Even after driving the car for 2 hours yesterday, it didn't squeal. So I reckon maybe they fixed that. So yay, I got some value for money. But yeah, that was this. They also of course changed all the fluids, like oil, like differential oil. Well, I don't think they made the transmission flush, because I don't have it on the bill here. But then and again, transmission, that works pretty nice. It's very smooth. And yesterday I checked the fluid and it was crystal clear, which honestly I don't know if it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing that it's this clear, but it wasn't like black and burnt and stuff. So I'll take it. It's good enough for me. So basically that's all that has happened. The work was 42 hours. It was about 7 grand. The machinist that drilled out the stud and stuff, the cost 232 francs. Fluids were 323 francs, and the parts the garage ordered were 713 francs, which includes the rear brake drum cylinders, small parts, Jubilee clips, a special bolt for the crankshaft pulley, oil hoses, an oil filter, the fuel pump, and a fuel hose. And also they ordered an oil pan gasket, which they turned out not needing because the oil pan was not leaking. It was a fuel pump. First it looked like it was the oil pan, but it was actually the fuel pump that leaked all the way down. So okay, so I have spare oil pan gasket now. Great. But I also supplied some parts myself, like the water pump, gaskets, valve cover gaskets, O-rings, belts, the drive belts. I bought those on Rock Auto, radiator hoses, yeah, the temperature sender and the repair sleeve. So in total I supplied also 221 francs of my own parts. They gave me a discount of 10%, so all in all it came to 7,537 francs. And if I add my 221 francs from the parts I ordered, I'm at 7,800 francs. So for a water leak and some oil leaks, without any major engine out and anything else. So that's the reality of owning a classic car in Switzerland if you are not a mechanic yourself, or you have a friend that does stuff for you basically for free. So I spent what I reckoned I would spend on it, because I reckoned when the mechanic called me in September and told me, yeah, you know, the things that were wrong and everything, that was shortly before I bought my Trans Am, because I reckoned the car would be away for a while, and I reckoned the Trans Am, buying that car would cost me less than the repairs on this car. And it's true, because my Trans Am cost me 6,900 francs. And this service obviously was 7,500, so it was way more expensive. And you might say I'm an idiot, because I agree with you, but I take it quite lightly, because it's money I am willing to spend on the car, because I think it's not completely lost. Fixing one of these cars up will add some value. Of course, it will not add all of it, so some of it will be lost, but I am also enjoying the car, and I think the enjoyment should also be worth something. So yes, I spent the money. I am also in the fortunate position that, you know, spending 7-8 grand on a car repair is not something that financially ruins me. Of course, I am not rich. I live in a rented apartment. Apparently I spend all my money on cars, but I still can do it with a smile, and that's good. But now I want to go into the backstory on why I wanted these jobs done. Because I knew there was something not great with the car, but the fact that it was losing coolant was something I hadn't noticed, and also because I have been a bit of an idiot, because after I bought the car I didn't regularly check fluids and oil and stuff, because I'm not used to owning old cars. And in I think it was June of last year, 2022, I took the car to Arbon, my hometown, where there was the Arbon Classics, which is a really, really cool gathering of classic cars, classic trucks, classic ships, I think, and even trains. It's only every 2 years, and basically I said next time, like when it was last time, because it didn't happen because of Corona for like 4 years. And last time I said, well, next time I will be there with my own car. And that's why I really, really wanted to be there with a Cadillac. So I basically prepared everything. I set off to go. I replaced the spark plugs before because the car was running not that great. So I put new spark plugs in it, and then it ran better. I actually also did a lot more work. I changed the ignition over to a Pertronic system, so I think it's a pointless ignition or whatever it's called. It's not pointless, it works, but it doesn't have any contactors anymore. It's got a Hall effect switch, so it's an electronic ignition. I switched that over, and the main reason was the car wasn't running that well. That's also, I changed the spark plug because of that, but yeah, it didn't run that well. But you know, I was determined I would go to the Arbon Classics, so I set off, took it on the motorway, and on the motorway this car is bad because if I close all the windows, first there's still a lot of wind noise, but also it becomes incredibly hot because I have no air conditioning. Basically the ventilation system is not very useful, so I had to drive with the windows open, or at least the quarter windows, and that produces a lot of noise. So basically I was going deaf on the motorway, and it was also a very warm day. It was like 30 degrees or something like this. So since the motorway journey was so uncomfortable, I tried to get off on the first exit that would, you know, wouldn't take that much longer than the motorway journey if I traveled the normal roads. And so when I did that and I slowed down and the noise came down, I started hearing a knocking sound. A tack, 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 tack. And I thought, is that my engine? So I parked right at the construction site right there, and I had to listen, and I accelerated, and it would change with the engine ref. So so it was an engine knocking. I opened the hood, and yeah, it was the engine knocking. So I turned everything off, and then I contemplated my life's choices. Because, well, my engine is knocking, so rod knock, huh? So, engine failure. What do I do now? I was about, I think, 30 kilometers from Arbon. So I went, well, I could now call, you know, the roadside assistance, have the car towed somewhere. Or, since the engine is dead anyway, I could try to make it to Arbon, so at least I could go to the Arbon Classics. I figured, well, you know, if I need a new engine or a rebuilt engine or an engine rebuild, I might just as well completely thrash the thing. So I decided to go on, but I also thought I'd check the oil very quickly, and then when I looked at the dipstick, it was completely dry, so I had no more oil in the engine, or very little oil, so not so great. So I drove to the next fuel station, and there I bought a liter of oil. And I put that in, and then the dipstick was still dry. So I put another liter of oil into it, and then the dipstick started showing a bit of oil level, and then I put, I think, another half a liter in, and then the dipstick showed full. So the car was 2.5 liters short on oil, and this car has like a total oil capacity of like 4 liters. So yeah, I was running the car with no oil. But lo and behold, the moment I turned the engine back on with the proper amount of oil in it, the knock was gone. Because I reckon it wasn't the rod knock, but it was the rockers running dry and making noise. So certainly not good for the engine. but it runs again, and I don't notice any difference. But I mean, these engines are war horses. They're not like precision engines like the new cars, and this engine is already quite worn. So I think that hasn't added too much damage. But yeah, it was an interesting experience and a good reminder to keep up on my oil checks. So yeah, so I continued on. I drove all the normal ways very easily to the Arbonne Classics, and there I had to stand. There was a bit of a traffic jam, because I was like stuck behind a giant steamroller, an actual steamroller powered by steam, like 120 years old, and that was traveling at like 5 kilometers an hour, like walking pace, and I had to drive behind that thing for quite a long time until I reached a point where I could park the car. And when that was the case, I saw that the temperature gauge started creeping up. So it was going up, and I was like, I need to park this car, I need to stop it, and temperature gauge was going up, and then, it maxed out at some point, but that was right when I was able to park the car. So I reckon, okay, the car, obviously, it tends to overheat when not driven, so I might have some problem with ventilation or with the radiator. But then again, I turned the car off, I parked it, I let it cool, and went my ways into the car meet and looked at all the fantastic cars and all the vehicles that were there. Then in the evening when I came back, I started the car, everything was working, it was okay, and I drove the car back to my mom's place where I stayed overnight because it was a 2-day event. And then I noticed the car was running badly. It was still running rough, and that just, why wasn't it running on all cylinders? It was making me insane. So what I did, I replaced the spark plugs once more, because I still had a set of spare spark plugs that I bought from Rock Auto, and putting those spark plugs in solved all my rough running issues. Because the old spark plugs that I had, I don't know how old they were, but probably they weren't that good anymore. And then I put in some Champion spark plugs. They were compatible, the right size and everything, but the car doesn't seem to run well with these. Or my car, since I reckon it burns quite a lot of oil, it fouls the plugs quite a lot. And these Champion plugs, they don't seem to recover very well from fouling. Whereas the Autolites that I put in now, they don't give me an issue. The car runs great, and I never had the issue with the rough running again. So that was good. But then I checked the coolant, and I found the radiator to be completely empty. So yeah, I filled it up with some coolant that I had lying around, and that was good. But then the next day I went again onto the Arbonne Classics, and again the car started overheating. And when I opened the hood, then I realized that there was water splash anywhere, so coolant splashing everywhere. So I reckon, okay, I have a major leak that is also splashing around, and yeah, it turned out to be the water pump. But so that means I was driving around carrying some spare water to just fill up the system, so for the car not to overheat, and that's not a situation that I wanted. So I had to really fix that. And also the fact that, I mean, sure, the car burns oil, but that it had so little oil in it that the engine, the rocker started knocking, that wasn't a good thing either. So the poor car has had some abuse, and so I thought I'd spend the money and fix it so that these things won't happen. But the oil is still something I need to check regularly, because I reckon this car burns oil. So that's it. 7.5 grand plus some more parts and stuff that I supplied, almost 7,800 francs to fix some oil leaks and a coolant leak. So yeah, but as a positive, I think, as I said, I think my power steering doesn't squeal anymore when I maneuver the car. So that's very good. But Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to update you on the Cadillac because I still have it. I will be driving it much more because it's now here with me in Langnau and not at my mom's place. And now it's summer, so it's the perfect time to drive it if it doesn't get too hot. Because if it gets too hot, no air conditioning, basically no aeration, not great. But I will be driving this car much more. I might do some work on the car again, and also maybe some more videos. You might see it, and maybe even a video where you see the car from the outside. But if you want to see more of this car, if you want to see more of me, more of my other cars, and whatever I have to say or I want to say, if you like this face, then please subscribe to the channel, like this video if you liked it, and share it to somebody who might be interested in a bald guy just talking to a camera. And this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see a picture once a month or so. And thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye. I feel a bit guilty for not even starting the car. Let's see if it starts. That wasn't too bad. The car starts, the car runs quite okay, but you know what broke? One of the seat adjustments. So I cannot really lower the seat and, you know, have the backrest independently adjusted, which means I either have a high cushion here under the seat or I sit like this because I cannot adjust this anymore. So this is something I will have to fix as well. So hooray! Yeah, sounds quite good.